The company's cloud folder had been reorganized overnight. That in itself wasn't unusual. Kevin was obsessive about file naming, folder hierarchy, time-stamped backups. But this morning, the Equity and Founder Agreements directory had a new subfolder, Legacy Structure Archive. Inside it, all the original ownership PDFs, dated, signed, legally binding, were tucked away like obsolete user manuals. And my name was gone. I didn't panic. I didn't refresh the page. I just stared at the latest document. Current ownership, finalized Q2. My hand curled under the desk, fingernails against wood. One breath, then stillness. One name, Kevin Whitmore, 100%. I made no noise, no movement, not even a flick of my eyes. I simply memorized the timestamp. 2:43 a.m. He must have assumed I wouldn't notice, or worse, that I wouldn't have access. I was the one who built the internal system. He forgot that. My name is Julia Whitmore. I'm 35. I was the lead developer, systems architect, and, until 2:43 a.m. last night, co-founder of Apex Layer Technologies, based in Austin. We started the company in my garage, and now it was worth over $40 million. Kevin walked in at 9:07 a.m. with 2 coffees. "Double shot oat for you," he smiled, holding it out. I didn't take it. "Late night?" I asked. He laughed, that same affected bark he always used when he needed to sound breezy. "Yeah, couldn't sleep. Figured I'd knock out some cleanup stuff. We're almost ready for Series B, right?" I nodded. Almost. He placed the coffee beside my keyboard, close but not touching, then patted my shoulder. "You're killing it, Jules. Couldn't do this without you." I watched him walk away. His swagger was subtle now, less like a brother, more like a man already practicing his solo TED Talk. By 9:12, I had my own copy of the altered documents. By 9:16, I had traced the device signature. It was his work laptop, VPN off, rookie mistake. I opened a separate terminal and executed a dead man's backup. Full repository mirror, emails, contracts, commits. I encrypted it with a passphrase I hadn't used in years. Austin never forget. The first real fracture between us happened in 2017. Kevin had pitched my prototype app to a VC friend without me in the room. Called it a collaboration. Promised to loop me in once the deal was in motion. He never did. That time I forgave him. I was still grieving our dad, still thinking of the company as ours. I learned later he'd used my father's death to soften his pitch. Said he was building something to honor Dad's tech legacy. But Kevin never cared about legacy. He cared about spotlight. And I'd stayed in the shadows because I thought family was worth the cost. Now I knew better. At 10:03 a.m., he sent out a Slack message. "Hey all, just finalized the docs for Q2. Let's prep for Monday's board sync." He CC'd the lawyers. My email wasn't included. That was his first real move. Erasure through paperwork, masked by celebration. I didn't respond, didn't confront, didn't forward the files. Instead, I scheduled a silent extraction of every trace of my authorship in the system code. Not deletion, just relocation. Quietly rerouted into a private branch under a mirrored shell account. Then I stared at the ownership PDF one last time. Not to question it, to remember what it looked like when someone declared war. He didn't even wait for me to leave. That was the part that burned. He didn't fear me. That mistake would cost him everything. I made my vow by 10:34 a.m. as he laughed with marketing about his Forbes interview. I would not take him to court. I would take his company from the inside out. No headlines, no drama, just clean, silent reclamation. There was a rhythm to the way Kevin operated, one I knew like second nature. He craved optics, pitch decks, Instagrammable moments of leadership. But beneath all that, the actual machinery of Apex layer ran on my decisions. Every back-end tool, every custom API, every real-time metrics dashboard, we never hired a second engineer. Just outsourced front-end fluff to freelancers. Kevin thought that made me indispensable. He didn't realize it made him replaceable. For 5 years, I showed up first and left last. I skipped weekends. I debugged code from hospital beds and funeral homes. When Kevin's credit line collapsed under Dad's unpaid debts, I negotiated with 3 banks to shield the company name. I documented everything. Not out of paranoia, but precision. I liked clean trails, time-stamped chains, the kind of details no one ever checks, until they have to. By the second year, Kevin stopped logging into the admin console, said the interface gave him headaches. So I rewrote the UX to look like a dashboard full of green lights, no alerts, no anomalies, just data for him to parade to investors. He loved it. Every time he needed a contract, I drafted it. Every time a client wanted custom software, I delivered it. He smiled, shook hands, gave interviews. I stayed off camera. We were never equals, but I let him believe we were. That was the trade-off. He needed to feel like a visionary. I needed the autonomy to keep the system from breaking. The company culture followed his lead. Stylish, loud, glass-walled optimism. He hired photogenic staff, all with vague job titles: brand strategist, product evangelist, culture architect. I stayed in the server room. 1 year ago, Kevin threw me a birthday lunch in the break room, vegan wraps, store-bought cupcakes, 1 bottle of wine for 12 people. He stood on a chair and made a toast. To my genius sister, without her there'd be no Apex layer. I do the vision stuff. She makes it real. Everyone clapped. I smiled. But that night, he locked me out of the financial account dashboards, said it was a glitch. Took 2 weeks to restore access. That was when I began making contingency plans. Just in case. I built parallel systems, air-gapped backups, password-protected scripts, legal templates buried inside unused directories. Every time Kevin made a change I wasn't told about, I responded not with confrontation, but code. He called me paranoid once. "Why the hell do you need all this redundancy? It's just us." I said nothing. He never asked again. The last client contract I handled was for a mid-sized logistics firm in Toronto. Kevin had promised them a custom data sync solution within 30 days. He never read the technical spec, just emailed, "Jules'll handle it." I built the entire integration in 19 days, including a rollback system and multilingual support. I tested it across 3 server environments, logged every change, and handed it over without a single question asked. He closed the deal for $600,000, never once mentioned my name in the press release. Now that I was scrubbed from the company docs, he probably assumed I'd quietly fade. He misunderstood the kind of quiet I deal in. The kind that studies system logs at 2 a.m., that memorizes folder paths, that writes shell scripts disguised as error handlers. Kevin's power came from performance, mine came from function, and when performance fails, all that's left is the system that still runs. At 6:12 p.m. that day, I received an auto-generated Slack invite to Founders Only, Apex Next Phase. I declined. At 6:14 p.m., I accessed the legacy shell and disabled the user logging feature. At 6:20, I executed the first trace, a passive scan across Kevin's email accounts for any unsigned amendments, redirect rules, or forwarders. I found 3. 1 routed any document with my name to a junk folder labeled dormant. He hadn't deleted them. He just made them invisible. It was sloppy. And it told me everything I needed to know. He didn't erase me because I was a threat. He erased me because he thought I never would be. Our father used to say that success without control is just theater. Kevin liked that line. He quoted it at investor meetings, plastered it across pitch decks, even had it printed on our first company t-shirts. What he never understood is that Dad meant it as a warning, not a mantra. Control isn't about charisma. It's not branding or bravado. It's documentation, leverage, levers you don't pull until the floor gives out. Kevin had spent the last 2 years repackaging our company's origin story. In his version, he'd built the platform in a basement apartment after losing a startup job. Said he taught himself code. Said I joined 6 months later as a technical advisor. He told that story at tech panels, podcast interviews, even on a local TEDx stage. I watched one clip, once. He referred to me as my sister Julia, our original engineer. The audience clapped. He beamed like a lone genius. And just like that, the company I helped create became his personal fable. It didn't surprise me. Growing up, Kevin always knew how to rewrite the narrative. When we were 10 and 8, he pushed me off the garage roof playing Superhero Rescue, then told our parents I slipped chasing butterflies. I got 6 stitches. He got ice cream. I should have known better than to trust him with a company, especially when I was the one who absorbed all the liability to keep us afloat. 3 years ago, we were nearly sued by a fintech client after Kevin overpromised a delivery timeline. I stepped in, rebuilt the feature in 4 days, and rewrote the SLA overnight. The lawsuit disappeared. But the cost, an internal memo quietly shifting legal liability to me, stuck. I found that memo again 2 nights ago, still marked as draft. Still with Kevin's initials. He'd started testing the waters back then, siphoning responsibility off his plate, quietly isolating me in the back-end architecture, turning me into a ghost in our own narrative, and I let him. Because I believed we were building something that would outlast us, something that honored the wreckage our father left behind. When Dad died, Kevin and I were 29 and 31. The estate was a mess. Debts, defaulted patents, a half-finished automation rig collecting dust in our childhood garage. Kevin wanted to sell it all off. I convinced him we could build something from the ashes. I don't want his failure to be the final thing attached to our name, I'd said. Kevin had agreed, or pretended to. We founded Apex Layer 6 months later. He sold the story of innovation through legacy to anyone who would listen. I filed the LLC, paid off Dad's creditors with my own savings, moved into a 2-room apartment above the old rig shop. He moved into a downtown condo and hired a photographer to shoot our origin story photo set, him holding a soldering iron, sleeves rolled up, fake grease on his cheek. I didn't even know the photo existed until it showed up in Tech Founders Weekly. It took me years to realize the truth. Kevin never wanted to build a legacy. He wanted to erase one and rewrite it under his own name. And now, with my name gone from the files, he thought he'd finally succeeded. At 11:23 a.m. the next day, I sent a test document to our internal notary bot system, a PDF contract with my name as co-founder. The verification system returned an error. Unknown identity tag. He hadn't just archived the original founder agreement. He'd rewritten the chain of custody on the founder's ledger. That required access to the notarization keys, stored offline, air-gapped, protected behind 2 biometric levels, which meant only one thing. Kevin had cloned my biometrics. He must have done it during the security updates last winter, when he convinced me to scan both our thumbprints and retinas into the new key vault for redundancy. He didn't need redundancy. He needed access to remove me. That was the moment the theater ended. I stopped thinking of Kevin as a brother, stopped thinking of this as salvageable. It wasn't just about stolen credit or vanished equity anymore. This was identity erasure, And for that, there would be no forgiveness, no open letter, no public confrontation, just a methodical unraveling. At 12:01 p.m., I opened the backup directory labeled Coherence. Inside was a nested folder with over 600 documents, timestamps, chat transcripts, unedited commits, voice memos, and full audio recordings of internal meetings where Kevin misrepresented me as a contractor. The metadata was intact, the legal trail was unbroken, and buried in the middle, item 227, was the original notarized founder's agreement dated 3 minutes before Kevin's revision timestamp. Identical document, one signature difference. Mine. I moved it to a new folder. Exhibit A. 3 years ago, I helped a software licensing attorney recover from a ransomware breach. Her name was Lillian Park, former in-house counsel at a major cloud security firm. She panicked when her archives were locked, but I restored everything in 6 hours and built her a custom file redundancy system. Refused payment. She called me a ghost with perfect timing. I called it karma banking. I reached out to Lillian at 2:17 p.m. Kevin scrubbed my equity from Apex Layer. I need this fixed, quietly, and I need his audit trail exposed. She didn't hesitate. I still owe you 6 years of gratitude. Send me everything. I did. Within the hour, Lillian had cross-referenced every file, confirmed forgery, identified 3 breaches of fiduciary duty, and found a fatal compliance error. Kevin had misrepresented founder status in our Q1 investor filings. It was enough to freeze the pending Series B, but we didn't act yet. First, we needed him to think he'd won. I began writing a series of internal messages, measured, neutral, professional, each one subtly affirming Kevin's leadership decisions. I replied to investor emails with calculated enthusiasm, even suggesting Kevin be the face of our upcoming pitch to Vantage Capital. Lillian drafted a legal ghost protocol, a non-confrontational paper trail that ensured I remained publicly cooperative while we quietly built the case to dismantle him. We weren't just going to reclaim what was mine, we were going to trap him in his own architecture. I ran a silent scan on our internal HR system and confirmed Kevin had added a non-compete clause to my file, retro-dated, which meant he intended to lock me out of any future projects post-removal. That misstep gave us jurisdiction. He'd altered employee documents without consent and tied it to a falsified equity structure. Under Texas law, that crossed into contractual fraud. I called a forensic notary, one I'd worked with on a cybersecurity audit. He validated every altered hash signature Kevin had created and matched them to time logs from his personal machine. By day 3, the folder labeled Exhibit A had grown into a file tree titled Recovery Sequence. But I didn't touch a single public-facing asset. No warning, no confrontation. Kevin still walked around the office like a man with nothing left to prove. He ordered new business cards with Founder and CEO embossed in gold, took investor calls on speakerphone, smiled like he had just sold the cure for digital cancer. He even planned a Vision Town Hall, a performative all-hands presentation where he'd unveil our new growth era. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was celebrating my erasure, and I was engineering his. Lillian called on the morning of the town hall. Her voice was calm. The contracts you signed in 2021 weren't just employee agreements. They were conditional IP ownership clauses tied to your name. That means you never relinquished core rights, even if your equity was tampered with. Translation: Apex Layer's core codebase was legally mine. I had designed 92% of it. Kevin had no rights to license or monetize it without my consent, and he had done exactly that, 14 times. Lillian's voice dropped. "We're ready, but when you move, you have to move all the way." "I will," I said. Even as I said it, part of me wondered if I'd already lost too much. But there wasn't enough left of Kevin to grieve. But not yet. There was one final piece missing. Investor complicity. I needed to know who was in on the cover-up and who was just following Kevin's script. So I planted a false leak. I emailed our top 3 investors an internal draft of the Series B projection doc with a hidden watermark that identified each recipient. I embedded a single trap phrase, post-co-founder restructuring. Within 12 hours, that phrase appeared word for word in a blog post by a startup gossip site. The leak came from one of the 3. That narrowed my list and gave me the last thread to pull. Now I had Kevin, I had the paper trail, I had the IP ownership claim, and I had the names of anyone who tried to hide it. All that was left was the cut. The Vision Town Hall was scheduled for Thursday at 11 a.m. Kevin had invited everyone, staff, advisors, even some angel investors. He planned to live stream it on LinkedIn. There was a banner already uploaded, "The Next Era of Apex Layer, Bold Vision, Singular Leadership." Singular, that word did the heavy lifting. I arrived early. He was in the front, checking audio levels, joking with the AV guy, sipping from his branded metal water bottle like he was prepping for a TED Talk. He wore his navy sport coat, the same one from his Founder of the Year photo shoot. He didn't notice me take the second row seat. He didn't think I'd show. He launched into his monologue with all the performative charm of a man who believed he'd already won. 5 years ago, I set out to build a company that could withstand the chaos of a fast-moving industry. I counted 3 subtle rewrites of our origin story in his first paragraph. He mentioned our team of brilliant collaborators, never names. He spoke of my vision and my design philosophy. And then he said it. "I'm proud to stand before you today as the sole founder and CEO of Apex Layer Technologies." A round of applause, smiles, Slack notifications buzzing in the background. Kevin smiled wide, confident and polished, and that's when the air shifted. I stood up, not loudly, no grand gesture, just stood, calm, calculated. He paused, mid-sentence, surprised. "Julia?" he said, the smile twitching. "Glad you could make it." I nodded. Wouldn't miss it. And I walked straight past him, behind the curtain, through the backstage door, and into the control room. On the screen was his slide deck. His final slide was a stylized chart, Apex Layer Growth, 2024 to 2026. It projected a 10 times increase in valuation. It included licensing revenue numbers. Licensing tied directly to the code I owned. I replaced the final slide with a single document. Intellectual property violation, legal notice of claim. Date stamped, notarized, signed, my name in bold. 10 seconds later, it appeared behind him on the screen. He froze. The audience didn't understand yet. They murmured, then turned to look at me, now back in the doorway, arms crossed. I spoke once, clearly. Kevin Whitmore has no legal rights to the Apex Layer codebase as of March 17, 2021. All licensing activity since then constitutes breach of intellectual property and contract fraud. Silence. I held up a flash drive. This contains a real-time audit trail. It's been sent to our legal team and our 3 largest investors, and it includes biometric tampering logs from Apex Layer's internal security system. Still no reaction. Not from him. Not yet. So I leaned in. "And Kevin, your Series B term sheet has been frozen. Vantage Capital has been notified of the compliance breaches. They'll be contacting you shortly." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Just a small click of his jaw. His shoulders fell out of performance posture. He knew. I left the room. Behind me, people began asking questions. Voices raised. Kevin tried to recover, stammering something about misunderstandings and shared ownership models. But the screen said what it needed to. By the time I reached my desk, the Slack channels had lit up. Wait, is this real? I thought they were co-founders? Julia just nuked the company in one sentence. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a secure line to Lillian. "We're live," I said. She responded with 2 words, "Execute everything." I hit send. Within minutes, our legal notification hit every board member's inbox. Kevin's admin accounts were revoked, his access to the financial dashboard locked. A temporary injunction filed against him appearing on behalf of the company. Apex Layer's investors received a formal briefing on the transition plan, and the cap table was restored, with my name at the top. Kevin didn't leave quietly. He tried to storm back into the office the next morning. Security stopped him at the front desk. Protocol, not performance. His badge had been deactivated overnight, and the legal notice had been circulated across all building systems. Still, he demanded to be let in. He shouted about fraud and sabotage and threatened to go public with his side of the story. No one responded. Not the receptionist, not the staff passing through the lobby. His voice didn't carry the same authority anymore, not when your name has been scrubbed from the signature line of every legal document tied to the company you thought you owned. At 9:12 a.m., I got a call from our PR advisor. "He's threatening to leak internal files. Should we engage?" I said no. Let him shout into the wind. Truth doesn't need a rebuttal when you have receipts. Our lawyers issued a cease and desist by noon. Lillian looped in a digital forensics team to preemptively block any confidential materials from leaving the internal cloud. By evening, Kevin's personal laptop had been subpoenaed. The board didn't call a meeting. They issued a statement. It was sterile, careful, exacting. Following a confirmed breach of internal IP agreements and falsification of company documents, Kevin Whitmore has been removed from all leadership roles and will no longer represent Apex Layer Technologies in any capacity. He didn't try to fight it legally. He couldn't. The documents were immutable. The security footage of him accessing the biometric vault, the Slack messages, the server logs, every signature, every timestamp. He was surrounded. The day after his removal, I walked into the boardroom for the first time in 2 years. No cameras, no audience, just 7 chairs. I sat in the center. The room smelled of whiteboard ink and expensive anxiety. No one made eye contact until I spoke. This company has lived off theater long enough. We started this above a garage. It should have stayed grounded. Now it will. Starting today, we operate on proof, not personality. We audit everything. No more silence passed off as trust. No more vision boards passed off as leadership. No one disagreed. One of the investors cleared her throat. "Do you want the title?" I looked at the empty nameplate in front of me. Kevin's old seat. CEO. I tapped the nameplate once. Number, that label's rotten. I want something quieter. They waited. "Interim technical director," I said. The room nodded. It wasn't about ego anymore. It never had been. It was about infrastructure. I rebuilt Apex Layer from the inside out over the next 6 months, cleaned up contracts, rewrote job roles, transitioned us into a leaner, quieter, airtight company. I didn't fire anyone from Kevin's inner circle. I just watched who adapted and who didn't. Those who tried to rewrite history were removed. The rest stayed and built something real. Kevin tried one last time. He posted a 12-minute video on his personal channel, said he'd been blindsided, called it a betrayal, claimed I'd hijacked the company he built with his own hands. I didn't watch it. Lillian did. She flagged 4 counts of defamation, drafted a response. We never had to send it. The video was taken down within 48 hours after YouTube received our claim. Kevin's channel now sits dormant, untouched since the collapse. He moved to Arizona last I heard, working on a new platform he described as Founder First. A dozen views on LinkedIn. No investors listed, no mention of me. There was no ceremony, no final confrontation, no viral clip, no apology, just silence, and the quiet clarity that came after. I kept working. Most of the original staff stayed, though some trickled out when Kevin did. The ones who remained, who didn't ask which side to take, only how to rebuild, became the real spine of Apex Layer. We phased out the performative titles. We sunset the social media buzzwords. I replaced our pitch deck with actual system maps, process workflows, code audits. No promises, just proof. Within 9 months, we regained investor confidence. The restructured board approved a new funding round. Smaller, leaner, strategic. No flashy headlines, just committed capital. People asked if I wanted to rebrand the company, call it something new. I didn't. Let the name stay. Let it remind people what happens when one founder builds in silence while the other plays for applause. But I did remove Kevin's bio from the site. No statement, no farewell. Just a quiet delete command pushed through the CMS. His name vanished the way he tried to make mine vanish. Only mine came back. The documents now list me as founder and technical director. The ownership filings are restored. The codebase is licensed with the correct attribution. I signed them myself, pen on paper, no ceremony, no photos, just clean, final control. There were moments when I considered reaching out, not to reconcile, just to ask why, to hear if he ever meant it. If the early days, the late nights, the promise to build something together had ever been real, but I never sent the message, why he'd need to wipe me from something we built together, why the applause meant more than the product, but I never sent the message. I already knew the answer. Kevin didn't want to build a company, he wanted a monument, and monuments have no room for the people who lay the bricks. A few months later, I walked past our old garage, the one where it started. The rig shop was gone, gutted and remodeled into a high-end coffee roastery. I stepped inside, ordered a tea, sat by the window. The barista wore a black apron with the word Legacy stitched in cursive. I stared at it too long. She smiled. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, just remembering something that never really happened. I left the cup half full, just like Kevin always left the truth. Walked outside, didn't look back, because the past doesn't deserve my full attention anymore, not when the future finally has my name on it.